I got one simple question for you. Is this the best Nuggets team ever? This is the Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us and making us part of your day, making us your first listen. Glad to have you with us on all platforms, whether you're joining us on YouTube or you can join the comment section with folks like Bubbles Buzzer Beater, who blames me for the late starts and not Adam, which is not accurate, sir.
Come on, Matt.
Riley Richards, Dominique Buckley, all sorts of folks hanging out with us in the chat. Want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. On today's show, we will talk about the Denver Nuggets, and I'll ask a question about the historical greatness of this team after their one of the most incredible runs I've ever been in person for at any NBA game ever. We'll talk about Michael Porter Jr. and how he's the ceiling raiser for the Denver Nuggets, or not. And we'll talk about some NBA trade deadline stuff, as well as a new report from Mike Singer involving the Toronto Raptors and Bones Hyland. We'll do all that and more on today's show. First, welcome in. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. The other guy, joined by Adam Mares. Appreciate you guys being with us. Let's go ahead and get started. Adam, I drove an hour last night. I got in time. I got there just in time for tip-off. I was running late. I had some dad stuff to do. And so I was like, I'm just going to get there right before the game. I walk in, I sit down, I come in after the anthem, I sit down, and the game is over 12 minutes later. 12 minutes of playtime later, the game is over. The Denver Nuggets, after it was 14-13, close on a 35-6 run, the juiciest part of that being a 32-2 run.
I was going to say,
you like that one better. I like the 30. I don't know why. I like the 35-6 one, even though it's a point less better. But yeah.
32-2. They scored 2 points over like 6 minutes. I mean, it was incredible defense, incredible offense. It was arguably the best stretch of the Jokic era. If you just said, like, what was the best 5 minutes that Nuggets have played in the Jokic era, I think it's up there. Other candidates would be the final 15 minutes of the Game 7 against the Clippers, which was also near perfect basketball. There's a couple stretches like that throughout this, but that one to me was as dominant. I mean, granted, it was a Timberwolves team that was missing 2 key pieces, Karl-Anthony Towns and Kyle Anderson. But just the way Denver played so connected, the way the ball was popping so consistently, and the defense was there, it just was the Nuggets. I've made this comment a bunch. When you watch a team over and over again, people always break it down like last 10 games, last 20, whatever. I think the Nuggets have played phenomenal basketball over since December, I think 7th, minus about a 7-game stretch where Jokic missed some games because of the hamstring. Like there was a little lull. And I just feel like Denver was like this. They hit a little lull, and that culminated with the 76ers game. But since then, they've gotten back into that rhythm, into that groove. And I just think their best basketball is ahead of them.
It was incredible. It was just like, it was one of the most dominant performances I've seen out of a team. And, look, it's like, yeah, but it's the Wolves. I'm telling you, like, the Wolves aren't bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. This is not the Rockets. It's not the Spurs. And they just absolutely dismantled them. I mean, just tore them apart. And to me, the part of this is, and Harrison Wynn mentioned this from DMVR. He was like, the Warriors put up 51 in a quarter on the Nuggets, but the Nuggets scored 38 in that quarter. Like, this was a two-way destruction. The Nuggets played good defense, got stops, ran, and created.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that? Because I honestly think that was the missing ingredient. And we've talked about this a lot. And this is a knock on Jamal, but it's not a knock as in it's a fatal flaw. I liken it with Jamal to Jokic 3 years ago, before he was an MVP. When we talked about could he be more aggressive, right? And it's like, well, he's so good. And the offense is so good. I'm not sure he needs to. Well, now that we've seen him score 25, 26, 27 a game, it's like, oh, yeah, clearly that makes an impact and he's at a different level. I think with Jamal, it's the same thing. Are the Nuggets the number one offense when they have Jamal? Yes. Are they the number one offense in the clutch when they have Jamal? Yes. Is it clear that Jamal is the right guy for the job? Yes. But that doesn't mean that it can't be a little bit better And in one way that I think it can is just in the pace. The reason the Nuggets turned a 10-0 run into a 32-2 run was because they kept getting stops and they kept sprinting up the court and punishing them. And I'll say this. I was thinking of this as I was driving home last night, Matt. Tempo is like spinach for Jokic. It's like spinach, Popeye spinach. He is the best player in the NBA at reading things quickly. So the faster you speed things up, the more his skill set is augmented, because everybody else is going fast and they're missing details because the game is sped up. He's not. And so last night, I think one of the things that we saw was the game got sped up. They were running, sprinting in transition, and he's just finding the guy like so quickly before the defense can even react. I think it's the one piece of last night that really tells you somewhere that Denver can go that's actually better.
I asked MPJ I was like, what makes you guys so great in transition? And he mentioned Aaron Gordon. He was like, you have me and KCP. We really work hard to get to the corners.
Yeah.
Which we know that's like what he's been told. And he was like, Aaron, AG, he's like, AG is working so hard to get to the middle. And so when you have that, there's so much space there, and Joker's so good at pushing that you're able to create and there's just no way to not find a mismatch. Like they can't find enough matchups. And it really is kind of true. Like once they get downhill, it really is over. And they're the best transition offense in the league. They're on pace for one of the best transition offenses. I think as far as I've checked, this is going back to like 2011. This is the best one that we've seen. That's when we have like stats available for transition stuff. Like they're absolutely what?
Of any team?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Like they're on pace for a historic transition offense here, which actually, this is what's surprising. Their gap in transition offense is so much wider than it is on an advantage in transition is so much wider than it is in half court. Half court, they're only sixth. Now, all of that is like Jokic and non-Jokic minutes, right? So like the Jokic minutes are probably at top level in terms of on court. But it is kind of just telling of when they run, they are one of the most effective units that we've ever seen. And we'll talk about Michael Porter Jr. in the second segment and about what he does for the squad. But I do want to ask you this question because I haven't seen a team in Denver play better than that. I was around for the entire 2013 season when they played, when they won all those games. They won 57. That's the team with the most wins. The team with the highest margin of victory was back actually in 77. And so like there aren't statistical signals that this is the best Nuggets team ever, and they're unlikely, honestly, to finish with a better record. Like it would have to like really put the hammer down to finish with 58 is the best record of
I think they're actually on pace though, aren't they? I'm not saying it'll happen either, but I think
it depends on if you're doing record or Pythagorean. They're not, and that's the one I trust. It tends to regress more that direction historically. Like that's
the only reason I mean, I'm with you on it. It is a good indicator. The one thing I'll say is the Nuggets through the first 20 games are not there in the last 35.
Yes.
40. And I think this is even true when you look at, everybody says, by the way, Denver might finish with a top 10 defense. I think they're 14th right now. But when everybody says you have to do that, they have been that for a majority of the season now. The sample size is getting large enough that we could say,
I've been talking about this about look, they are top 10 in two categories for the last 2.5 months of basketball.
Yeah.
They're in offense and defense. So since December 7th, the trick here is, I always talk about how teams are different teams throughout the course of the season. Yeah. It's like, do we believe that this is going to be the team the whole rest of the way, the last quarter of the season? Can they keep that's my thing here is I'm like, how do you possibly keep their attitude is right, because they're neither high nor low. Like the guys are honestly not that impressed with themselves. Like I keep trying to. I am actively every post game trying to drag something out of Joker that he's proud of, and he's just like, yeah, it was good. Like I asked him, Harrison asked him, you're now the assist leader in the NBA. Is that something that you're proud of? He's like, it's good. It's fine. But it's a number, right? And I was like, what if you finish with the most wins in the league? I was like, all right, you care about wins? And he was like, yeah, it's good for the playoffs. And I was like, God, man, you got to take some joy in this. You got to take some satisfaction. But to your point, So if we take since December 7th, which you're right, that is like that's when the season kind of turned. Since December 7th, the Nuggets are on pace for 58.5 in expected wins per 82. So they're on pace. They're tracking towards 58.5 since then. The problem is that the record and performance was so low before that impacts things, but we'll see. Like they can get there. It's just a matter of you can even not play that well and get the record. That happens all the time. I don't know if that means anything. I think the bigger thing though is if you're gonna ask me 5 years from now, what was the best Nuggets team you've ever seen? I'm gonna say this one. Right. This is the best Nuggets team I've ever seen. Going back all the Melo years, going back further, this is the best one that I've ever seen.
I think. I'm probably with you on it. The thing about it is though, Matt, is that I feel like we haven't consistently seen this team yet. We saw them for 9 games. They had a 9-game win streak, and we saw it that in that stretch. And we've seen it now for 4 games. I know they lost the one where they rested everyone, but if you throw that one out, we've kind of seen it then again. If we see this for the rest of the year at this level of consistency, then I'll agree with you. I actually think, though, if I were a betting man, I would say that Denver in the post-All-Star break segment, I'm not sure their record is going to change because the games are tougher. They're on the road more. But I think we're going to see the best of them ahead, not behind.
2 more thoughts on this game. By the way, David Walker does not agree. He believes it's the 77 team that it was the greatest of all time, and they would have won the title if they didn't run into Bill Walton. Sure.
It was before my time, so it's hard. I mean, I obviously have no frame of reference for it.
Here's the other thing I'll say is to your point, and again, like really want to stress that this is not a Jamal criticism, or it's not a like, even if it is a criticism, it's not like a Jamal's a problem. It's just like, this is a thing that needs to be worked on. I asked Joker about 44 assists on 58 made shots, which is an absolutely bonkers number. And it would have been higher if they played the entire game. Like they would have broken every, like if the starters had come back in and played hard, if they played hard after the first quarter, quite honestly, because they deserve to coast this game out. If they played hard after the first quarter, they would have broken the all-time assist record for a game.
The third quarter, they weren't as locked in as the first quarter. And it was also still like, it was the B version of the first quarter, meaning they still dominated even that quarter at 50% because the ball was popping and everybody was just in such a nice connection.
But I asked Joker about it, and that's exactly what he said. I asked Joker about the assists, and he said, it says, I asked him what does it say, and he's like, it says that nobody was holding the ball. Like, we're just moving it. And when you're moving it, good things are going to happen. Malone I think very correctly and astutely, I don't think like Malone doesn't want them to not pass the ball. And his thing was when you look at the turnover ratio, like that's what was absolutely absurd in this game too, right? Like when you have the assist track that they were able to put together of 44 assists to 10 turnovers, that's just phenomenal. And that's going to lead you to win a lot of games.
But I think that to me, those things are connected. I've always said this, that turnovers are rarely, there are sloppy turnovers and sometimes games are about that. But turnovers to me are more about the connection of the team. It's just like rhythm shots are more important than open shots, in my opinion. I think it's the same of turnovers. Like rhythm passing is better than non-rhythm passing. Non-rhythm passing turns into turnovers. Rhythm passing, you can have 44 assists and more passes than you average and fewer turnovers. Because again, the ball's popping and it makes it easier to make the next pass. I will say though, when you're talking about Jamal, I just want to put this in there. Jamal, to me, it's like Jokic has become almost flawless over the last 3 years, meaning whatever critiques you could have of Jokic, they're so minor, right? They're little things. And I think with Jamal, that's where we're at right now. It's not the critiques of him in aggregate as a player. It's like, hey, here's the final step. Being a little bit better in shape, which he has gotten into over the course of this year, and then just staying at that level of shape consistently, never having to ramp up in the season ever again. Taking more threes, which he's done lately. He's attempting more threes. And then I think it is just playing at a faster tempo. Those things, if he gets to them, in my opinion, he's going to become a top 20 player in the NBA.
Well, there's another player that made a case for himself finally getting there, maybe here down the road, and That's Michael Porter Jr. We'll talk about him when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. I used to say that hiring was a very random procedure and that you shouldn't get a lot of these times, like, it's just like whoever's on top or who they happen to see, or they were looking at a resume, but then somebody called or they were on their lunch break, etc., and that distracted them. But now with LinkedIn Jobs, you can avoid all that randomness and really get to having good process for your hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. You can identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. And it makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Our chat section is filled to the brim with trade comments because that's the season it is. And if you want more trade deadline content, we've got the third segment coming up for you. But also, you got to check out the Locked On NBA trade deadline show. Thursday, February 9th, tune in to Locked On NBA on YouTube at 2 Eastern to hear reaction from the trades that will change the rest of the NBA season. Who becomes contenders and who's tanking for a better future? Subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube and don't miss a deal. All right, back here on Locked On Nuggets. I'm going to give you the floor and let you talked about this on the DNVR postgame show, but I think it's important to talk about here as well. Michael Porter Jr. with an absolutely sensational performance last night, particularly in that first quarter with 19 points, as many as the Wolves scored. He had 30 points on the night on 11 of 15 shooting, 4 of 6 from the field, 5 boards and a steal, a plus 43 in the box score, which he was pretty impressed with. What are your thoughts on Michael Porter Jr. and what his performance means for the Nuggets ceiling?
Let's start with just the performance. The shooting was obviously great. I feel like his athleticism is coming back. His confidence on his shooting is coming back, which I think is an important thing. I am back to thinking every time he takes a three, I'm back to thinking it's going in. There was a period there for a while where I was kind of like, all right, well, he's kind of a regular shooter for a bit. Nope. Now when he takes a three, I just expect that it's going in. Are you there, by the way? Are you back to just expecting his shots to go in?
I'm thinking.
Let me look at his last handful of games because I think they've been pretty efficient.
I don't know if I ever expect any shot to go in is the way I'm wired, but I will say that I'm never like, oh, wow, he hit it. I'm always just like, okay, all right, another one. That's how I am with MPJ.
So he shot 50% from three or better in 4 of the last 6 games. One, he was 3 of 8. He did go 2 of 10 in the Minnesota game that nobody played except for him. So I guess we could throw that one out. I think his shot confidence waned a little bit as he came back from the injury, but I think over the time it's gotten back. He's back in rhythm. But the defense is what stood out to me. I mean, we've talked a lot about the theory of Michael Porter, the defender, 6'10", 6'11", length, athleticism, how hard that is. But I just feel like teams have tried him lately and gone away from it quickly. Meaning they've tried like, okay, we have a good D'Angelo Russell has him out on an island. Like everybody flatten out here. Let's see what happens. And I just feel like they try that 2-3 times early and are like, yeah, that's actually not a good matchup for us. Mm-hmm. And defensively, to me, he's just making plays. So in that, I need a whole 2.5 more months of that before I really believe it. Like I just won't believe it over a short sample size. But 2.5 months, if he continues it, I'll be very confident going into the playoffs. But for me, he's the ultimate ceiling raiser of the Denver Nuggets. When he's on and has a good game, the Nuggets win. It's just almost full stop. Maybe the biggest correlation, if you just picked one stat to correlate with winning, it would be Michael Porter Jr. plus minus. When he's a plus, Nuggets seem to win every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers back this up so convincingly that they're just basically unstoppable when he is contributing at that level. And I think a lot of it is it's a combination of MPJ's performance on high percentage looks is higher than average. And his percentage on lower percentage looks is so high too. Like he has so many possessions where it's like, and it's not him, right? So like Aaron catches it, but kind of bobbles it, and then goes into like takes a step back. Well, okay, that's like a 35% to 40% shot. MPJ is like 45 to 50%. Like his jumper is just kind of there. Harrison, I've noticed that he's started adding that little baseline floater, which is like an important addition to his game because now he's got a counter for how they close out to him in the corner is he can get to that baseline floater. It's interesting to see it because this is the same Kawhi trajectory where they told him like corner three, corner three, corner three. He works on getting to the little baseline floaters, a next step off of like a 2 dribble. Yeah. Then they're going to have to step up on that and he can get to the middle off of that. So, and he talked about how like, if I can't get to my jumper, I need something in the middle. And that's been like a thing I've worked on to kind of be cognizant that I can get to those shots. And so he's leveling up. He's adding more layers to his game. It's also just like, it's no longer as awkward and stilted in terms of the offense would work, but it always seemed like MPJ was this piece kind of stuck on the edge of a functioning unit. And now like MPJ is just part of it. He's integrated with the rest of the offense and he's integrated with the rest of the defense. Again, like it's just been so long. There are still these possessions where it's like, what happened there? But they're
fewer though, man. They're fewer and fewer. I feel
they are. They absolutely are. You're 100% right. The other thing there is that even I don't notice them as much because they don't score on them anyway because the rest of the defense is so good too. But yeah like he has way fewer moments of like, oh wow, what was going on there? And that just like lower instances of that. All of these little things are adding up for the Nuggets to make them so good, and MPJ has been a huge part of that.
I think he is so analogous to Klay Thompson. We've always said this, but I think more so than ever in a couple ways. One, I think Klay Thompson's a bit of a ceiling raiser for the Warriors in that you go through all that work to stop Steph, and then sometimes Klay hits 4 in a row, and you're like, well, how do we do that? And then, but I think in this way, KCP's a great shooter. He might be a better shooter than Michael Porter, pound for pound or whatever you want to qualify it in a vacuum. But I don't think he is greater in terms of the effect he has on the defense when he's making threes. I never feel like KCP is about to go for 30. He might go for 30, but he'll hit a few threes in a row and it feels like, oh man, he got hot for a second or the Nuggets found him for a second. When Porter hits 2 shots in a row, I'm like on the edge of my seat, like, oh my God, we're about to have a 20-point quarter from Michael Porter. Like it just feels like it's not going to stop until he subs out of the game. And I think that psychologically, maybe some of this is like Klay Thompson. His jumper is so pure and perfect looking. There's a feeling of inevitability when he hits it where you're kind of like, of course that went in. That was supposed to go in. It looked perfect. And I just think this is part of why I think he's such a huge ceiling raiser is when he hits 2 threes in a row or when he has 10 points in a quarter, there's this sense of inevitability that I think the defense overreacts to or just properly reacts to that opens everything else up. And I think that's a big reason why when he has these Porter quarters, Nuggets end up scoring 40 points in the quarter or like last night, 49 points.
I think the Nuggets do a really good job of getting him the ball and looking to get him going. I think they know that if he gets going, everything gets downhill for them. Like Gordon was looking for him pretty consistently last night. It's crazy that like Aaron Gordon had 24-3 with 8 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks. And we have
incredible game.
Like they're just all this team is absurd in terms of what they have and what they are able to bring every single night on both ends of the floor.
If Michael Porter is not a defensive liability, if teams are not able to find a pick and roll duo of him and Jokic, and I'm not sure, that question is still in the air for me. Like I want to see other teams try at it. But if Denver, if you told me right now that's not going to be an issue for the Nuggets in the playoffs, to me, their title odds skyrocket. Yeah. It's by far my number one concern. And if that is a no longer concern, I look at it and I go, wow, okay. The next concern is the bench, and the bench in the playoffs is just such a small thing.
Teams can get into trouble when they keep trying to attack the weak spot that's not enough of a weak spot.
Yep.
Like if you're picking on something that is a super weak spot, it can literally change. Like it can dominate that series and be the overwhelming narrative. But there are a lot of times when teams get too far down that rabbit hole, being like, well, we got to attack Porter. Like in this instance, like we got to attack Porter because we can't beat the rest of their defense.
Right.
Well, if your ceiling in those possessions is still average, you're not going to win that series. Like, you have to be able to perform. And a lot of times, honestly, just targeting one guy takes everybody else out of the offense.
I was going to say, in particular, the ISO one guy offense, because if it doesn't work, it falls on one guy's shoulders more than anyone else. Like if it's James, I mean, let's use James Harden as the example, because he's the guy that, like, if he's holding the ball 3-4 times in a row and only scores 1 out of those 4, everybody else is looking at him like, all right, man, give it up. Stop doing that. And so I think that is your hope with Michael Porter, that he can get enough stops in the pick and roll and in those plays where the rest of the team is looking at going like, all right, let's try something else.
Yeah, the Dallas matchup, if it happens, that one would be an interesting
Dallas
one.
would be a really good example.
We'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about some NBA trade deadline stuff. As there's some news from Mike Singer on potential landing spots for Bones Hyland. We'll go around and hear about what's going on with the rest of the league. As we get closer, we're just one day away from the NBA trade deadline. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because it's the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel's also got a risk-free same-game parlay for the Super Bowl. So you can do something like Eagles defensive touchdown, Eagles to win, Eagles first half and Eagles to win, and you can get a pretty good payout on those. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. If you want recaps of every single game across the association, make sure to check out Game to Game on the Locked On NBA feed. Obviously, there's episodes on Locked On NBA. I'm on there on Tuesdays. Adam's on there on Fridays. But you can also check out Game to Game, which has expert analysis from all the Locked On hosts from across the network every night, every game. I want to get to this real quick, by the way, just as a comment from a watcher here on YouTube. Bogdan Popa says, I'll be traveling 6,000 miles to get to see the Nuggets in their last 4 games of the season. Will I only get to see P-Dog, Ish, and Davon, as the Nuggets will have clinched the #1 seed by then? Yeah, buddy, I'm sorry. You're probably not going to be catching much of the Nuggets.
My guy, Bogdan. Thank you.
I don't think that there's probably going to be I would say that there's a very low chance that the Grizzlies will have hung on to be within range. Maybe the Suns are making an absurd push, but they're so far back, it's hard for me to see them.
If you get Nuggets to see 4 games, I think you'll catch 2 meaningful games.
You think so?
Yeah, 2. I mean, for one, if you clinched 5 games left in the season, I still think you play your guys the last 4.
Probably. You don't want them having that much rest off. You'll have at least see 1.
You might not see a great Nuggets games because it's hard when you know that the game doesn't matter, but they're not resting 4 straight games, man. There's no way. I also don't know if they're going to be that far ahead. The Nuggets schedule gets tough ahead. Like, the Grizzlies are better than whatever it is they've been going through this last stretch. They're not this bad.
I would tell you that they are experiencing a rapid regression to the mean, in part based off of teams realizing they can't score in the half court. Like, they were down at home to the Bulls last night, and they closed on them, and they're usually a terrible fourth quarter team. I watched that game. The only reason they won that game was because it was a 3rd and 4 nights back to back for the Bulls. Right. The Grizzlies are in bad shape. Levi says, you guys said yesterday that you didn't think the situation with Bones could be salvaged. What happens if they just can't trade him in the next few days? I'll let you take this one, and I'll give my thoughts.
The can't be salvaged part, there is like a can't be salvaged as in, would he not want to be traded, and would the team not want to trade him? If they can't work something out, I do think that there's a world in which he just comes back into the fold until the offseason. Like, I would be surprised if it became a long-term solve. It's still on the table, but I don't know that he would be a disruptor. And the reason I say that is, like, even Ben Simmons, it got really bad. They still traded him eventually. Like, they held on to him. He didn't show up to the arena. He didn't do this or that. And they still traded him and got some value out of it. I don't expect that to happen. I would still bet money on him getting traded. But if there is just no good return, if there's nothing of value to be gotten from this one, I wouldn't be wholly surprised if Denver held on to him and it was just like, hey, you're out of the rotation. I know you're unhappy. We're going to work to make, this right in the offseason and get you, a solution for all parties involved. But we couldn't get a deal. We're not going to just give you away for nothing and put us in a bad spot. And maybe he's disgruntled, but I don't think Michael Malone could bench him until last week. Now that he has, that's the status quo. And that's better for Denver. It's actually a healthy spot to be in with Bones, where it's like, hey, somebody is going to get hurt eventually. Murray's going to rest some games. Some guy's going to be out of the rotation, and you'll have an opportunity if you want. If you kind of like come back into the fold and buy in, you're not the default setting, but there might be a Christian Brown-esque opportunity for you.
Murray was out last night and Bruce Brown got hurt and he still didn't see the floor.
But it's the trade deadline. I mean,
that's it? Okay. You think that's it? Okay.
I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if even if he did hold on, if Ish had moved ahead of him, if Denver was just like this. But what I'm saying is Christian Brown played great earlier in the season, and I declared that he was permanently in the rotation. And guess what? I was wrong. He was out of the rotation for 15 games again. Then he got back in. I just wouldn't be surprised if Bones, if he did stay, had a similar thing happen where he's out of the rotation for the next 10 games. But then at some point, something happens where somebody else gets knocked out of the rotation and things behind the scenes have been better. And, he's kind of bought into the fact that it's now inevitable that he's in Denver until at least the summer. And there's hey, we need a point guard. We're shorthanded tonight. You're going to play 15 minutes and plays well. And it's okay.
That last part is key, though, about stuff behind the scenes gets better. It'll be up to him.
Sure, of course.
He's going to have to commit. He's going to have a good attitude. He's going to have to, get a little bit of trust back, not just from the coaching staff. There's going to have to be, and the players have been extremely supportive of Bones.
Right.
There's been nothing but support of Bones because, that's how these guys always view each other is as a brother. But things are strained. There's been some damage done there, and there's got to be a little bit of repair, I think. David says this,
but it's possible. I mean, young players are going
for sure
through things they've never gone through in their life because nobody's gone through these things. An NBA experience is not something you prepare for. It's something that you're okay, here we go. So I just want to say, while it does feel inevitable that he gets traded, and it does feel like if he doesn't get traded, that it would be difficult for there to be a happy ending, so to speak, from that. He's so talented and he's so young that there is a scenario in which he does stay. He gets, he goes through some hard lessons, and then he gets an opportunity in mid-March, where it's wow, that's the old Bones. He's bought in, he's playing better, he's making his shots, and that's a real asset to Denver. Whether he stays in the rotation for a playoff, there's that, who knows? But I'm just saying Bones is not as bad as he has been for the Nuggets, and I don't think that he is the type of person that you say he'll never fit back in with this group. I just don't think that's true.
D. Hume says, if KCP, Bruce Brown, AG, MPJ sprain ankle in the second round, do the Nuggets fall apart, or do they have wing depth to survive? Seems they need another body, and that's the upside I'm looking for in trade. You guys are not going to want to hear this. You're not going to want to hear this. But I'm going to tell you, they have the wing depth to survive. If it's Bruce Brown, it's Christian. If it's MPJ, it's Vlatko, and to a certain degree, I know you don't want to hear this, it's Jeff Green. I need to say something in support of Jeff Green. We were all what? Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing.
What?
I want to hear.
Media Row was did you see the cast on his hands? We're if it's not broken, it's really bad. He dislocated that finger, came back, and then hurt it again in his first game back. And Jeff's entire hand is in a cast right now. His entire hand. Now, that doesn't excuse how fast he runs or any of these other things, but a lot of this gets into will the Jeff non-Joker minutes be bad in the playoffs? Sure. Will the Joker Jeff minutes be good in the playoffs? Yes. Because all minutes with Joker are good. And as Adam has talked about a lot, Joker, Jeff Green actually is a Joker player.
You're going to laugh at this, but I honestly believe it. If he's hurt like that, I don't think the Nuggets need him.
I agree.
Even shorthanded. I
agree.
Can Jack White give you what one-handed Jeff Green can? Again, it's not ideal, but to me, yes. You're not need. You have so many players right now that the Jeff Green role, by definition, is an unimportant one. it's at most 15 minutes here or there. So if he does have a hurt hand, shut it down, man. Come back in mid-March.
I agree. I totally agree. Let's talk about some trade deadline stuff. So Mike Singer reported this morning on a couple of teams that are interested in Bones Hyland. Among them are the Timberwolves. No surprise there. The New Orleans Pelicans, who I've talked about before. I think that interest is like a casual interest. It may turn into they might be able to work out a deal. And the Toronto Raptors, who have a little bit of interest in them. Maybe you could get a deal done. Like Chris Boucher might actually be a pretty a decent.
You can get Chris Boucher for Bones.
They are out on, like, I need to stress to you how much the Raptors are out on their guys.
Man, first of all, that would be an insane trade. Boucher is great, man. He's like Vanderbilt. That guy has a motor on him. He offensive rebounds like a beast. I think he can play with Jokic. Like
Nick Nurse does not agree with your assessment. So.
Look, if you're just talking about a flyer on a guy who does hustle things, unbelievable. That would be an incredible get, in my opinion.
Now, maybe it's something more like Malachi Flynn.
Well, that's unexciting to me. Like a small guard. Yeah, like, come on, what are we doing here? But whatever. I will say, Jake Fisher has this report, and I know there's a million reports right now, but the KD situation, will Brooklyn trade him? I'd be shocked if they traded him tomorrow, just because it's rare a player of his caliber, a team pivots that abruptly, and this is like, well, I guess we have to find a landing spot for the best forward scorer in the NBA currently in 24 hours. I just don't think that'll happen. But even if there is wind, if somebody catches wind that's a thing that's going to happen this summer, I do wonder how much it affects the trade deadline right now. And Toronto is the best example of this. If Toronto thinks that they can maybe make a pitch to get Kevin Durant in the summer, they might not trade OG Anunoby. They might not trade Siakam, Boucher, any of these guys, because they might say, hey, this is a thing, and we're going to put together a crazy package to get LeBron James and Kevin Durant.
There's two things happening simultaneously. Teams are trying to find cap room to be able to absorb KD into a trade, right? So they want expiring contracts, or they want deals that are going to expire next year so that they can possibly trade into the KD spot. And then I think teams definitely are like, I think it is going to cause a little bit of paralysis. So Mark Stein, just before we went on air, he reported in his newsletter that like he's skeptical that the Raptors are going to trade some of their other guys. Again, I'll tell you, this has been my line consistently over 3 weeks. I've spent a lot of time talking to people about this. This is my read on it. Fred VanVleet should be a minus number, so he should be favored to be traded. Gary Trent Jr. should be like a very small minus number, almost a coin flip to be traded. OG Anunoby, OG Anunoby should be a decent size, like plus 200 or more plus number to be dealt. It is more likely that OG is not traded than traded.
By the way, might be bigger news than any Bones trade that OG is not traded, because I personally think OG can flip the title odds a little bit in the Western Conference odds if he went to the right team. So if he doesn't get traded, to me that's good news for Denver. He wasn't coming to Denver,
right?
So if he's not going to New Orleans, not going to Portland, not going to Memphis, it'd be like, okay, that's a win for Denver.
Yeah, Casey Max says OG will go to Indy. That is one of the teams that's interested in OG, I've heard. And then Pascal Siakam, I think it's like, I don't know who is, I genuinely don't know like who thinks that they're going to get him. If you have called the Raptors and gotten what they want for OG, how can you possibly, like, I don't even know what you'd put together. Like, you're talking about a bigger deal than a Drew Holiday trade for Pascal. Like, I cannot stress this, like, and it's not like
there's only one team that can do that, in my opinion, that's meaningful, and that's OKC. I maintain that they should do it.
So, like,
I think OKC would be an upset team in the first round, like upset potential.
I mean, I think OKC should trade for OG and have Shea, OG, and Chet next year, and they can pay him. He'll be a star. It all works. So yeah. So I think.
I like this question. Now that Denver is a contender, what are the chances they become a preferred landing spot for buyout candidates?
I think higher than it's ever been based off of DJ, Jeff, and Bruce. Like, those guys, it's very clear that like Jeff got here and then told DJ and Bruce, like, guys, it's so, like, you're just going to score so much. Like, it's so easy to play with Joker.
And no drama. Like, I think that's another thing that veterans, they've been to places where it sucks and they've been to places where it's not. It doesn't. And I think Denver doesn't suck.
Media is soft. It's not a high profile market. Like, this is a very easy place to play.
Do you think Goran Dragic is a good fit? Is he too washed?
I think he's a little washed.
So even with that second unit, you don't think he would make like a positive impact as a Bones replacement?
He's probably an upgrade on Ish. I don't know how much.
Okay.
Like, I actually think Ish has been like Ish's defense this year is what's actually really surprised me is like Ish is playing really hard on defense. So that's been kind of interesting. Tommy says Rubio. I don't think you're getting Rubio under any circumstances. Let me tell you that right now. The Cavs love Rubio. They love what he does.
He's also still good.
Yeah. They love him. So, yeah. So somebody asked in the comments about, why does the trade deadline seem so quiet? I don't know that it is. We usually don't see trades until the last, there's usually one the day before. So we'll see if one happens today. And then there's usually one, then there's usually a handful on the day of the deadline.
I think people also don't realize that KD holds up a lot just because, he has to. The best players in the league hold up trade deadline because everybody wants to know what's going on there. KD, I don't know that people know this. I think more so than any other player in the NBA has no leaks from his camp because he doesn't have a camp. He has a very small group. Nobody knows what he's thinking or doing. So unlike with LeBron or Harden or this or that, where there's like intel, I think with KD, there's no intel. It's literally just nobody knows what he's thinking.
Yeah. I could DM him. Do you want me to DM him?
Yeah, you could.
Because he follows me. So yeah, I don't know. Like, why is this trade deadline so quiet? Well, Kyrie Irving just got traded to Dallas. So it's, pretty intense thing. I will just say that, I continue to believe that you should have very low expectations for the Nuggets at the trade deadline. That's not to say that they won't make a deal. It's entirely possible. Something may come up while we're recording this podcast. A call might be made that will change the dynamic. But
could Calvin Booth win Executive of the Year in the next 24 hours?
No.
I think he could.
Okay.
I think the KCP and Brown trades have enough that was really good. I think Christian Brown as a draft pick has been good enough that he's not the favorite or anything. But if you somehow made a move that none of us foresee or that we're all like, wow, he got that for that, I think that who else is in that conversation right now?
Who's going to get it? Who's actually going to get this thing?
Sacramento has made some nice moves.
Yeah.
They could be in the conversation. They're a surprise team that has gone.
They'll probably just give it to Brad Stevens.
Maybe. I don't know, man. Denver might have the number one record. I'm just saying, a somehow pulled off a Caruso move, a move where we're kind of holy crap. They add Caruso without losing a major piece, a meaningful piece. I just think that you would look at this and go wow, what a turnaround of a roster and what a perfectly built one. I don't think it'll happen, but I don't know.
I will tell you that this is somehow the best of both worlds for Denver because my thing was, man, if they are the best team in the Western Conference, you've got the target on your back. There's all this hype. Somehow the Nuggets are the number one team in the Western Conference and no one's talking about them. I don't know how this is possible.
Perfect. It's so perfect.
Everyone's like, yeah, Denver's good. And I'm like, they're substantially better than everyone else in this conference.
Oh, here's somebody actually gave the right answer. You were wondering who wins GM of the year. It's the Utah Jazz, and this is what's wrong with the NBA. Why would they win it? Because of their future assets, which is a good thing. But it's
funny because that's actually not what usually happens. That almost never happens.
Right.
You only win it when your team wins your team wins is kind of in Calvin's position. Of oh yeah, look at their record and look at the team that he put together. I'm always no, your move should be I think last year it should have been the Pacers, trading Tyrese, moving Sabonis for Tyrese Halliburton. That was a great long-term move.
Cleveland has a good, Donovan Mitchell was big. So that they have a good case, but I'm just saying if he somehow turns Bones into a meaningful playoff impact player, again, I don't foresee it. I'm not predicting it, but if it surprises us, you'd have to look at it and be he made 4 moves and all of them were great at making the number one team in the NBA.
I think it's wild that there's almost no shot that Michael Malone's not going to win Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't get support from most of the fans of his own team. So that's funny. All right. That's going to wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys have a good day. No show tomorrow because I don't want to do a show at like 11 Mountain and have it be extinct by noon. So we're going to wait. We'll see what happens at the deadline, and we'll do a post trade deadline show sometime tomorrow. And then we'll be back on Friday with a normal morning show. Hope you guys have yourselves a great day. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe. Give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're still trying to get those up. Go to YouTube and subscribe. Hit the like button. Those things really help us. We love the support that you guys give us. Thanks for being part of our community. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.